Chavre, how are you? Today is Erev Chag Shavuos, Sunday Parshas Nosoi. The hour is late, but one should not try to seek the easy way out. So we'll hopefully say a Dvar Torah, a thought for the festival. I hope everyone is gesund, stark and freilich, begashmis verbrüchnis, healthy, strong and happy, physically and spiritually. Before we begin, let's say two psukim for the matzav in Eretz Yisrael, all our kinderlich, all of Yidden, kol b'nei b'reis Yisrael, b'chol mokim sheim, and especially in Eretz Yisrael, should be completely safe and healthy. Hine lo yonum v'lo yishon, shomer Yisrael. Adonai yishmorcha mikol ra, yishmer es nafshecha. This week's Parsha is Parshas Nosoi, and the Alter Rebbe said we have to live with the times. So we're going to connect the Parsha with Shavuos. I mentioned already before that this year we'll try to speak about speech, the power of speech. And I thought to myself, concerning Shavuos, the Rebbe brings 2 days in a row about, in the Yom Yom, about making resolutions in the area of Torah study. Shavuos is a time where we have to look at ourselves and our Torah study, the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, which Talmud Torah keneged kulam, and to see where we could improve. So there's one area that I know I could improve, definitely, and it's something which is not, I don't think, stressed enough. Before we get to it, let's talk about the Parsha. In this week's Parsha, the majority of the mitzvahs, which many of them have to do with the Nazir, reflect the power of speech. For example, this week's Parsha has the mitzvah of vidui, confession. V'isvadu es chatosam. By the way, according to all the major commentaries, when it comes to the mitzvah of tshuva, whether it's a mitzvah or not, whether it's a biblical commandment, everyone agrees that the mitzvah of vidui, the confession part, is definitely a biblical commandment. So we see how essential it is. In other words, to audibly voice your regret. We're not going to the explanation of the mitzvah now, but we're emphasizing that point, that the mitzvah is this act of audibly confessing. Then we have the mitzvah of the Nazir, and the mitzvah is connected to a Nazir. How does it all start? When a person takes a vow of abstinence, for example, from drinking wine. So it starts with his speech. He takes a vow, and that vow has a chalois. It affects the reality, so to speak. It becomes prohibited for him. And then finally we have another mitzvah, an amazing mitzvah, the mitzvah of birchas koyanim, a mitzvah of biblical origin, and the mitzvah is that the koyanim should bless the Yidden, and they say Yivarechacha Hashem v'yishmerecha. So those words that they say have power, and we're not going to get into that mitzvah right now. In general, it's amazing. We should just daven to Hashem. No, we say that there are koyanim that have a special relationship with Hashem, and when they audibly bless you, their blessings have power by the power that Hashem gave them and their special relationship with Hashem. So we see 3 mitzvahs, vidui, nazir, and birchas koyanim. And what do we see the common denominator in every one of the mitzvahs, of these mitzvahs? The power of words. Now concerning limud Torah, there's something very, very interesting. And we'll begin with the halacha in Shulchan Aruch, which the Alter Rebbe brings in Hilchos Talmud Torah, Perek Beis, Sif Yud Beis. V'chol Adam, every single person, tzarich lizoyer, has to be very careful, l'hoitzi b'svasav, to audibly speak, or lashmiel oznav, and be able to hear, kol mashal loymid, whatever he learns. Bein b'mikra mishnah v'talmud, elim kein b'shas iyun lahavin davar miter davar. Unless he's in the middle of concentrating to understand, so he has to meditate and analyze with his brain. But other than that, kol mashaloymid b'hiro levad ve'efshaloi lahitzi b'svasav, anything which was possible for him to be able to verbalize, ve'einei moitzi eina yoytze b'limud zeh. Yidei choivas mitzvas ulemadatem oisam. Sorry. He doesn't fulfill his obligation. So in other words, it's an essential, integral component of the learning, of the obligation of mitzvahs Talmud Torah, that you have to verbalize it. And he brings over here the pasuk, Lo yomer sefer haTorah hazeh mipicha. So we stress this point that it has to be verbalized. Now, there's a sikha of the Rebbe, Chelik Tes Vav Vayeshev Daled. It could be that in the following weeks we'll get to this sikha, which it comes out from that sikha that there's really three aspects to the reason why we have to speak Moitzi B'Svosov, the words of Torah. But first, let's think about the contrast. I always love to see the contrast. Do we have this idea in any other studies? And so much so that the Razal say, Chayim heim l'moitze'eyem. The literal translation means that it's life to those that find it. But we learn out that Razal say, Chayim heim l'moitze'eyem. L'moitze'eyem bepeh. That till only those that release the words of Torah from the mouth, then it's Chayim. And then it's Torah Mishtameres. Then it remains. Otherwise, you forget it. So the Rebbe in that Sikha talks about this idea. But let's just talk about the contrast. Do we find in any other culture, any other studies, where the person is going, it said, Einstein said that if we do this, and Darwin said, no. It doesn't say anywhere that you must, even if sometimes it says that people that cram the studies and they memorize, and they might say somewhere a tip that if you verbalize it, it will help. But there's no stress that this is the obligation, and not only that, and if not, you will forget it completely. So what's the reason for it? So there's many different aspects. Today we're just going to speak about one, which is connected to Shavuos. And that is, but first, the famous classical question that everyone asks, anyone who's studied anything in Chassidus about the holiday of Shavuos knows the famous question that Me'olam le'posku yeshiva ma'aviseinu. Avram learned Torah, Yitzchak learned Torah, Yaakov learned Torah. They always learned Torah. So they had Torah before the Torah was given. So imagine we say all the information was already there. So what was the accomplishment of Matan Torah? So the way I once heard my Mashpia say it, ad rufte von Matan Torah nicht in was ist gegeben geworden, nor in wer hat es gesagt. The accomplishment of Matan Torah wasn't in the information, but it was in what was injected in it. In other words, God DNA, the essence of Hashem. As explained in Chassidus, Onoichi, I, Misha Onoichi, the essence of Hashem himself. Before Matan Torah, for whatever reason, it was more like we have in the Megillah. We have the messengers of the king, the writers, and they come with a scroll and they say, in the name of the king. So we had the information of what's in the Torah, but it was just connected to a level of the name of the king, a reflection, a ray, a level called Giluyim. But by Matan Torah, we say God put his essence, the essence of Hashem himself, was put into the Torah. And therefore comes the second accomplishment, as explained all over in Chassidus, that before Matan Torah there was a Gzeira, Elyonim leyardu letachtoinim, letachtoinim leya'u elyonim. When the Ovis, or whoever was before Matan Torah, their children, the Shvatim, whatever they fulfilled, any instructions that were written about in the Torah, except for the mitzvah of Milah, the object did not become a chefza shel kedusha. It didn't become an object of holiness, because they didn't have the level of godliness that is essence, and therefore didn't have the power to transform the physical into the spiritual. Only when you have a level which is higher than spiritual, cannot be defined as spiritual, and it's not physical, only when we have the essence of Hashem himself does it have the power to transform the physical and make it spiritual, and it's at the same time. And that's what it means, that before Matan Torah, El Yoinim, the analogy of the Bnei Roimi, there was one country that was on top of a cliff, and there was another country that was at the bottom of the valley, and the twain shall never meet. Heaven and earth were separated, and only by Matan Torah did heaven and earth merge and become one. And this Alter Rebbe explains beautifully in chapter 36 and chapter 37 of Tanya, where he explains that the whole purpose of Matan Torah and Judaism was because Nis'ave, every Lubavitcher knows this, the Medrash that says Nis'ave, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Lias Lo Yizborech, Dira B'tachtoinim. God desired to have a dwelling place down here below. This is one of the most fundamental concepts in Chabad Chassidus, and in the story of Shavuos, in the holiday of Shavuos, this is the central theme, and this answers all the questions. Any question you have about Shavuos is related to this concept. For example, the whole story in the Gemara where the angels are arguing, saying they want the Torah, and then Moshe Rabbeinu says, but it says in the Torah, you have parents. And he says, do you have an evil inclination? And so on and so forth. The whole Torah is talking about a physical reality on this planet Earth. So one way to look at it is, okay, so it's a lowly thing, and it's dealing with people that have evil inclinations and laziness and problems, whatever problems are included in earth, poverty, disease, headaches, pain, suffering, whatever it is, evil. But no, if that was the point, so why are the angels arguing for it? The Malachim are sitting there saying they want that Torah. And the answer is because it's the Torah which is dealing with Tachtoinim. Down here below on this planet Earth is where the essence of God is. Because that's what He desires. He desires a dwelling place down here below. He desires that a Yid with the power of Torah and mitzvahs transforms the world, and he dwells amongst us on this planet. That there should be a Jew with a Nefesh HaBahamis, with an animal soul, with a Yetzer Hara, who struggles, overcomes the adversary, and rises. And that's how Hashem gets his nachas. Nachas ruach lefonei she'amarti v'nasar tzoni. That we're not like angels, we're not like robots. We have struggles, we have challenges, and we overcome this challenge, and that's what God desired. Nis'ave, He desired Lo Yizborech Dira B'tachtoinim. In the lowest of the low, as the Alter Rebbe says, Tachten she'ein tachten l'matei yemenu. There's no world that's lower than earth. And it's precisely this lowliness that He desired as His dwelling place. And that story of Judaism, the story of transforming the physical into holiness, when does it really start? By Matan Torah. And the climax will happen when Mashiach comes. So in any case, based on this principle, let's talk about man. Where is there more tachtoinim in man? The lower part of you is your brain or your mouth? So in chapter 37, the Alter Rebbe says that since when you use your mouth in studying and learning, there's more of your Nefesh HaBahamis, your animal soul, your drive, your energy that's invested. Therefore, in a certain sense, it's more important for you to verbalize Torah even than the thinking and understanding with your brain. Because in that way, there's more of the Dira B'tachtoinim. It's the lower part of the person, and more of your, so to speak, blood and guts. Your energy of your animal soul is more in your speech than in your brain. Your brain represents the more superior part of you, the more elevated part of you. But which part of you is more the tachtoinim and has more of the physical energy of the animal soul? Your speech. And this is what the Alter Rebbe says. These words. V'chol ma shemedaber b'koyach godol yoser. The more forcefully one speaks words of Torah or davening, hu machnis hu malbish yoser koichos min nefesh achiyunis b'dibure melo. The more of the animal soul's energy he introduces and clothes in these words. So therefore he's converting, channeling, and elevating and transforming more of his animal soul. And that's really the whole purpose, like it says, V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha b'shnei yitzarecha. There's the work that we have to do with the animal soul. The more sweat that's involved, the more we're elevating the animal soul, and that's the more of making the whole idea of dira b'tachtonim a dwelling place in tachtonim. The Eibusher should help. We should remember this whole idea that the main idea of Shavuos is that there's a giver of the Torah, noisin of Torah, there's the godliness of Torah, the essence of Hashem that we get united with when we learn Torah, and that the Eibusher wants us to verbalize it, and that's how we fulfill the obligation, because the mission was to make the world a better place, and in you, your tachtonim is your nefesh habahamis. So get excited, learn loudly, learn with achayis, like it says in Hayom Yom of Tez Zayin Shvat, the 16th of Shvat, as lernen und davnen mit abren. There has to be a fire enthusiasm in the learning of and davening. Like it says in the verse, and the Alter Rebbe brings it down here too. All my bones proclaim your greatness. In other words, you're having the top to toe experience. The point is that that excitement should manifest itself even in your bones. That means more part of your body, your tachtonim, is involved in your learning of Torah. The Eibusher should help. We should make good resolutions in the study of Torah. Torah protects us. And this is what the holiday of Shavuos is about. We should all connect ourselves more powerfully with the Torah. Let me just say one verse of the Birchas Kohanim, even though I'm not a Kohen. Yivarechecha Adinoi v'yishmerecha. This is to every single Jew, that you should all have the best life possible. Begashmis u'beruchni is gam yochad. And the Eibusher should help that this year for Shavuos, like it says, all those that needed to be healed were healed. And this should happen tonight in Yirtzeh Hashem, and tomorrow. Everyone should hear the Aseres HaDibros, and we should be zeicha to hear the Torah Chadosha Me'iti Teitzei from Mashiach Tzidkenu Lekabolas HaTorah B'simcha U'B'pnimis. Posting from my home, Be'ez Hashem Yisborach, your man in Melbourne.